Welcome back. You are listening to episode number 54 of the Cream City Club podcast. I'm Spencer Michaelis, and I'm here as always with Gunnar Amalunk. Gunnar, how you doing tonight?
I'm a little tired, a little exhausted. The Brewers got an all-star break, but I guess I did not. But you did get a break, Spencer. You took a trip to Minnesota, gave yourself a little bit of a vacation, saw a couple baseball stadiums. So how was that trip for you?
It was good. I do not feel rested and relaxed after this after this trip. Too much driving. But the baseball part of it was very fun. We went out to the Twin Cities for the Brewer series, but on the way we took a bit of a detour, went through Cedar Rapids to watch the Timber Rattlers play in Cedar Rapids just to see another minor league park. And it just so happened to be the Timber Rattlers who were going to be there. So that was great. I got to see Luke Adams get hit by a pitch, which is very exciting for me. New single season record holder for the T-Rats, by the way. Already 25 hit by pitches this season. Pretty incredible. That's my hero. But no, it was a fun trip. Minnesota was cool. We stayed right by the Mall of America, took the train to the games. Interesting, always interesting to take the train, but it got to meet some friendly and interesting people. But stadium was awesome. Really, really cool place to see a game. I thought in terms of like seating layouts, it was one of the best I had seen where there were very few blind spots no matter where you were because I had the chance to kind of walk around and look at it from almost every angle because of a couple of rain delays to start both games. So, um, really well designed, other than the fact that they could have a roof and instead decide to put one on their football stadium, which doesn't need a roof because it's a football field. Um, it was really cool. Great view of the city from where we sat game one. And then we sat, if you know Target Field at all, kind of where the tall wall is, where all the flowers are. We were in like row two, right behind that for the second game, which was a cool spot to see a game from too. So very fun trip. Definitely, I wish I felt more relaxed when I got back, but I don't at all. I'm very tired as well. But it was still definitely worth it and a good time. But before we get into this the Twin series in a second here, if you're listening and you haven't yet subscribed, please take a moment to do so on whatever platform you are listening on. Rate us 5 stars. Follow us on Twitter at the Cream City Pod to stay up to date on these episode releases. And as you may have guessed, today is going to be a Brewers focused episode. We got a couple questions from our listeners, but before we get into any of that, Gunnar, what do we got coming up?
We'll talk about that twin series that Spencer was at. I know obviously Spencer was there, but and you might have saw it too on I was gonna say on the broadcast or they posted a couple clips, but the Brewers fans traveled pretty well to
Oh, yeah.
Minnesota, it seemed like with the chants and all that. So that was good to see. Then obviously we in our time now that we've been sitting here with the Cubs series happened. They know the game three already happened today. It was an early game. So we'll talk about that series in entirety. We got some sad news coming out of this series. Christian Yelich injury news, his back injury. We'll dive into how serious it is, how not serious it is, and what the ramifications of that are. And then, as always, we got our questions for the crew. Some of those questions are limited to, but not all of them, are the Brewers bunting too much? Is Brice Turang back? 2023, Brice Turang, is he back? And then some of our new draft picks. More of a question from me to Spencer because I'm interested in knowing if any of these guys crack the top 30. Obviously, some of them do, but where do they slot in compared to some of our guys that we already have in our system right now? So, but yeah, let's start with that twin series. In not the prettiest of fashion of all of these games, the Brewers did manage to win 4 or 5 of them, coming out of these All-Star breaks. So game one in the twin series. Just some quick highlights, I guess. We'll break down. Obviously, a lot happened towards the end of this one, but got a solid Freddie start out of the All-Star break, which is good to see. We know that we talked about it. He needs to be huge coming into the second half and start pitching like a number one pitcher. Started to do that. I hope he went. I wish he would have went a little bit deeper in this one, but obviously pitch count and stuff like that played a role into that. I think he tied his highest pitch count or was like one shy of it, whatever it was, but still a solid start from him. Jackson Churio starts going absolutely manic this series in the next couple of games. And he's been on a pretty good run now for probably over a month now or so since like June 1st with a lot of the stats that you've been seeing with his numbers. But yeah, before we get to the end of the game, because that's when all the action happened, post eighth inning and on, did you have any notes of maybe of those two guys, Spencer, that this is really what started it?
Yeah. Freddie, it was an interesting start for Freddie. The line looks really good. I mean, it was 6 innings, 2 hits, 2 walks, 8 strikeouts,
Hmm.
no earned runs. He was he was doing things differently, and I'm going to be very curious to watch his next couple starts because he had a pretty big drop in his changeup velocity in this one, and he threw it a ton, which is not a pitch he uses a lot. And like I said, normally the velo's not that much of a difference between the fastball, but it was in this one, and it seemed to really give the Twins problems. If he can throw that changeup along with maybe a little bit more velo than what we saw in the start on the fastball, like he's going to be really interesting to watch. I think that is the best version of Freddie I've seen in a while. He was still had his frustrating moments. He was still getting ahead and then letting him climb back into counts and not able to put guys away early, but he ended up getting through six, like I said, with 8 strikeouts. Pretty hard to complain about that one. And yeah, Churio, it was just, it was around the time everyone's kind of started pinpointing like the start of his hot streak, which is beginning of June, that you could just see he was starting to look more comfortable in the box and that he was starting to take his A swing more often. He was starting to trust what he was seeing more often. And this series just felt like exactly the type of guy I used to watch when he was in the minor leagues coming up. And I say used to watch like it was a long time ago. Last year and the year before, the only 2 years he was actually even in full season ball or in America. And it just looked like that guy. He looked confident on the bases. He looked confident at the plate. He's going after stuff in the outfield more aggressively, and he has been for a while. Just looks really good right now. He was he was fantastic in this one, and Freddie was too. Obviously, Brian Hudson had a little bit of a hiccup. Ended up giving up that earned run that allowed the Twins to tie the game at one. And like you said, there wasn't a ton of action the first 7.5 innings of this one, really. The Brewers scored their 1 run early on the Churio ground ball single, and then Hudson gave up the, um, I believe it was a fielder's choice, technically, ground ball to Turang. Turang threw home. Seemed like Turang took a little bit of time to get it out of his glove, which may have cost him on that one. But a really close play at the plate. Willie Castro, who's fast and an all-star this year, has had a really, really good season. Just got his hand in. So another one where Brian Hudson probably didn't look as great as we had been accustomed to, but also I didn't feel like he pitched terribly. It just seemed like he gave up the double and then the Twins were able to push the run across. But yeah, it wasn't a very exciting game. And then all of a sudden, well, you get into extras and they're still not scoring at first. Both teams go scoreless in the 10th. I'll be honest, sitting up there watching us go scoreless in the top of the 10th, I did not think we were going to see an 11th inning. I was not feeling super, super confident in the team at that moment. But give credit to, I believe that was McGill who pitched the 10th. Yeah, McGill pitched the 10th. Pretty clean inning. He had a walk, but he did have a strikeout as well. And then everything started happening, like you said. So the Brewers in the top of the 11th, they go out, and it was another fielder's choice and another play at the plate, this time in the Brewers' favor to take the 2-1 lead. Turang grounded into that and scored Ortiz. And then Yelich came up against a lefty with, I believe it was first and third at the moment on the bases. Yep, first and third, and lays down a bunt. And this was, I could tell early in the game he wasn't super comfortable running, but this was the first time it was pretty clear that he was uncomfortable running because when he got the bunt down, I was certain it was going to be a hit. I knew the run was scoring because there's only one out. It was a perfect bunt. It was a smart play by Yelich, who, by the way, is by far the best bunter on the team, which is somewhat unfortunate when he's clearly the best hitter and you don't normally want him bunting. But he's very, very good at it. But he was just not able to unhook the trailer trying to get to first base. And I think he was trying to run on that one. Most of them he was not. That one, I think he really was trying to beat it and he just couldn't go. But that gave the Brewers a 3-1 lead, and things were looking pretty good. Runner hadn't moved against Jacob Junis, who did a good job in this game for the most part. Carlos Santana at the plate. We all know Carlos Santana very well. He gets to a two-strike count by throwing a perfect slider on the inside corner, maybe a little bit off of it. Santana took a bad swing at it. He clearly was not seeing it well. I said to my dad and my brother, who were right there, I said, Santana should not see another fastball in this count under any circumstances. And the next pitch came in, and it was a fastball, and Carlos Santana sent it flying into the night. It was one of the no doubters. There weren't too many in the series, even though there were a decent amount of homers. This was the only one that I was 100% sure was gone the moment it left the bat. I probably said some words I shouldn't have said. Wasn't very happy. Was not happy with William Contreras. Now, I didn't see the location live. I did go back and watch it on video. It was a bad pitch, obviously. It was still a terrible pitch call. There was no reason to be going back to a fastball there. It should have been another slider, or you could even talk me into a changeup. There was no reason to go fastball. William Contreras' pitch calling has annoyed me a lot. Doesn't mean it's not what the Brewers want him to do, but it does mean that it's not what I would do if I were catching. That tied the game. I was pretty confident again that the Brewers were probably going to lose this one at that moment. But yeah, Gunnar, did you have, before we move on to the 12th, which ended up being the deciding inning and a very good one for the Brewers, did you have any thoughts on the, I guess, the Santana at bat and really just how the Brewers were able to push across their 2 runs?
Yeah, I think first, rewinding back to that Yelich, JB, you mentioned how he looked uncomfortable. The scare, obviously, always with Yelich is it's like, oh my God, did he just tweak his back? But you're like, first came out of the break, he's probably fine. Didn't have a great day at the plate, so you're like, maybe he's just feeling uncomfortable in that sense. Like he's just not having a good day at the plate, so he's trying to make something happen. We'll talk about the bunts later on. This bunt to me was fine, like you mentioned too. Like it seemed like it wasn't a complete sacrifice. It's a sacrifice, obviously, in the book. But it seemed like he was like, okay, I'm going to try to bunt for a hit here if I can. I'm a good bunter, and if I can make something happen. And the part of the surprise of it is also why it works too, because if he's just sitting there squaring up, they can run up and have a play at the plate. But the way that he did it, there's no chance they're going to get him at the plate. At least they got him at first base because he can't run, what sucks. And we know why eventually. But yeah, I mean, we played for 2 there. I know that's a big topic that we've been talking about with these extra inning games is, oh my gosh, we need to get more than 1 run. So we got our 2 runs. Still didn't matter, like you said, with the Santana at bat. Wasn't super happy with that one. Eunice didn't look like he had his great stuff. Eunice didn't have the best of stuff. Obviously, those stats don't really count against you, but he's been good for a while and he's fine to me. It's just, yeah, maybe bad pitch call, bad pitch, I guess, location on his part to Santana there. But what happened obviously in the 12th was some of the highlights here. I just had it up, I guess. But yeah, so I mean, Blake Perkins starts it out with a single. Uh, then Jake Bauers singles on a bunt again, which again, bunt city here with the Brewers.
We got to talk
Um,
about that play though, because so I never went back and watched it, so I don't know what the broadcast showed of Jake Bauers, but I could see it very cleanly from my seat.
mhm.
He pops up the bunt and immediately like spins around and like starts walking back towards the Brewers dugout. I don't know what the Twins were doing on this play. The third baseman didn't crash. I think that was the plan, but the pitcher
Mhm.
didn't play it well. And then I'm watching Jake Bauers. He has not left the box, and the pitcher is trying to pick up the ball down the line. He ends up kicking it a little bit. Bauers finally starts running. If I can't remember who was pitching, it was a lefty. Either way, if he just turned and threw to first base, he would have got him out by 10 steps on a ball that his home to first time would have been like 8 seconds. Like it was ridiculous. It was terrible by the Twins. But I don't know what was happening in the mind of Jake Bauers at the moment. But it ended up loading the bases, and like you said, that kind of led into the big inning. But I don't know what did they end up showing of that on TV? Like, did they show Bauers not running? Did they mention it? I don't even. I was
I don't really
curious.
remember. I just know it seemed like awkward play, and it was like, oh, he's not even close, really. And then it just the whole play did seem kind of sort of awkward and weird to me, especially with Jake Bauers too. It's not a guy you would think that actually would do that anyways. But yeah, it was just an awkward sort of scenario all around. And then Joey Ortiz, I think, had the sac fly
Yep,
after that, a little bit after that. And then I believe this was the hit, but Jackson Churio just absolutely pieces one in the center,
yep,
squares it up completely well. And then, yeah, Brice Turang gets a little single, and then obviously we explode. And then I think Contreras had the last hit or something to make it 8-3. Then, of course, we can't walk out of here with a clean inning at any point, and then they score a couple runs, but we were able to get out of here with the win. So, yeah, I mean, it's weird because it seems like the Brewers are scratching across, just not a lot of runs, and then all of a sudden we had this big explosion there at the end. So yeah.
Yeah, Junis gave up the Manfred runner in that 12th or what inning was that? Yeah, the 12th. But he didn't allow anyone else to score. Think he needs to thank Jackson Churio for that because he made a
Mhm.
fantastic diving catch to end the game that would have at least scored one more run and kept the inning going. So, just a like we said before, it was a fantastic game from Churio, and he went ahead and carried that right on over into game two on Sunday. Another very close game, closer than I would have preferred for being at the game, and feeling not great again as that whole game was going on. But we're going to call this one the Eric Haas game because Eric Haas decided to hit two bombs in this one. He started off, did he start off the scoring for the Brewers? Yeah, he did. Brewers went down 2-0 early on a Christian Vasquez, what they called a single on a
Yeah,
routine ground ball to Brice Turang, who
that was not.
decided, no, he decided to go to second base, which was his first mistake because there was no reason not to throw to first with
Hmm.
Christian Vasquez running, one of the slowest people he could have possibly had on the bases. And then he threw the ball behind Willie Adames. Adames was not able to stop and redirect himself and get to the base. The ball trickled away from him. Two runs ended up scoring on the play. It should have been a clean inning. Instead, they ended up marking it as one earned run and one unearned for Junis, which or not Junis, Savali. I would beg to differ on that one. That is an incorrect scoring decision by the Twins. To call that a hit is absolutely insane. Either way, Haas came back in the third inning, hit a homer to left field. Byron Buxton immediately answered with his own home run in the bottom of the third. And that's when the Churio kind of, this to me was probably his best game of the season overall. He was able to tie the game at three in the fifth inning with a line shot at 107 into the gap for a two-run double to score Ortiz and Mitchell. Eric Haas, of course, followed that up with his own RBI single um, to make it 4-3. That one he just kind of rolled through the middle of the infield. Probably not. I would chalk that one up to more luck than anything else. And then Trevor Larnach, who is having a solid season for the Twins, definitely has some pretty big power, was gifted a non-strike three call and took advantage of it. Hit a two-run homer. You can see me on the video of that one. It bounced probably 10 feet away from me. It hit the top of the concrete on top of the wall. It barely got out, but it did get out. Two-run homer to give him the lead back. And then Churio actually finished the bottom of the sixth with a catch flying up into the stands somewhat, down the line on that angled wall in left field. Really good catch. I thought there was no chance he caught it live, and then he kind of came spinning out of there with a big smile on his face. So you knew he got it, but it was a crazy catch. And then I think he put his best swing of the season on the next pitch that he saw in the top of the seventh. And I want you to talk about this one a little bit, Gunner, but crushed a 445-foot home run, 108 off the bat. His bat speed on that swing was 83.2 miles per hour, which was tied for his second hardest swing of the entire season. And he connected on it and he barreled it. And it was, I shouldn't have said there were no other no doubters in the series because that one was 100% gone the moment it left his bat. I will say it was fun to hear the Twins fans talking about Churio the whole series. They were pretty in awe. The people around us when he hit that homer were just they kept going. This guy's 20. I heard that like I heard that like 10 times during this game. Just this guy's only 20 years old. And yeah, he crushed it. But Gunnar, what were you thinking watching him, especially in this game, but also this homer?
Yeah, you mentioned the bat speed, and that was the first thing I noticed is one, he looked like he just timed it perfectly, had no hesitation, nothing, limited movement in his swing, which is something that we talked about a lot with his is a lot of movement up top sometimes it feels like. So it makes him seem like he's a little bit off balance and he's a little jumpy at pitches or he's a little bit behind because he's just getting fooled a little bit too much. But this one, it almost seemed like he got the pitch call beforehand because of how much he was on this one. Like you said, I think that was his best swing by far this year. The combination of, like you said, the timing, the bat speed, all of it was just perfect. And even the double before that, same thing. And then the hit before the game before that, same thing. So it seems like he's just completely locked in. And he's been locked in for a while too. I mean, like we talked about early June, but I still think the one thing that a little bit scares me with him is the lack of walks still. I'll always point that out with guys. I think he's only had like one in the last 40 some at bats, I want to say. I looked today, but um, he's hitting so good, so he's probably still hitting close to 300 with that. But um, when you're hitting like this, and it's almost like a little bit of a Brice Turang effect early on this year, but obviously much better hitter here, much better power here, which is why it works out a lot better. I'm gonna plays better into his swing and his approach. This with the extra base hits that Brice Turang probably doesn't get you anyways, but that always makes me a little bit nervous because then there's not really something to sit on or sit back on. But at the same time, he's timing these pitches up so well. He's got a great approach right now. So does it really matter right now that he's not walking a ton? Not necessarily, but no, I'm liking a lot of what he's doing for sure. Um, and we've been talking about it for a while too. I mean, I'm not going to say this was like his showing out party a little bit. I mean, he crossed 700 OPS, I guess. So,
Mhm.
in that sense, I think he introduced himself to maybe the national media. I know I texted you, like, I think it's about time he gets some Rookie of the Year love.
Yeah.
Um, Paul Skeens, of course, is not making that enjoyable at all to have anyone. He just lost his first game, and I think he gave up like 2 runs, maybe one
Yep.
run in 8 innings. So he's not making that race any bit of fun. I mean, Joey Ortiz is our guy, but he's falling out of it a little bit. But either way, I think the point is that he's at least onto people's radars now. His defense has always been solid all year long, if not above average. It might still be right now. So um, now that he's hitting a little bit, I mean, he's going to end up in a really good spot at the end of the year. And he's getting hot at the right time, which is exciting. And then the other guy who we mentioned needed to step up here in the second half is Rhys Hoskins. Hit a huge 2-run home run. Same sort of thing here. Timed it up perfectly. Hit a monster home run. Barely got out. I thought it was a lot farther out than I thought it was. It
Yeah.
was, and then it
I
just
didn't.
barely sneaks out of there. I thought the fan might have helped us out too. I didn't want to say it, but because I don't want to make people feel bad. But I'm shocked no one actually pointed that out because it almost seemed like he pulled it out of the guy's glove to
Yeah.
rob that one.
It
But
they did review it and it wouldn't have been caught, but he did reach over.
yeah, it was close.
It was going to go out either way, but I did not think he got it from my view when he hit it. I just kept going, that's going to get caught at the wall. And then it just kind of kept
Hmm.
traveling and barely snuck out. But yeah, that was obviously a huge moment in that game. And then it felt like a bit of a smaller moment when Eric Haas hit his second homer in the top of the ninth, but that ended up being the difference as Trevor McGill struggled a bit through the bottom of the ninth. Leadoff homer from Byron Buxton. Next pitch, a ball hitting off the top of the wall and right for a double, but he settled in a little bit after that. I thought Eric Haas did a fantastic job with the pitch calling in the ninth inning, especially when he got Wallner up with the chance to win or tie. No, did they have a guy on base? I want to say it was to take, they could have won in that moment, but either way, they could either tie it or win it. Wallner was up. He was clearly seeing the fastball well. He fouled one straight back. And on 3-2 multiple times, McGill went to the breaking ball. And I thought that was fantastic pitch calling by Haas. It looks like it was bases empty. So it was just a chance to tie it still. But very, very good pitch calling. Very good execution by McGill. He was able to land it a couple of times, and Wallner ended up swinging through it. Broke his bat, was not happy, but I was happy. Got to finish off a trip with 2 wins. Felt like they were both losses, kind of, honestly, but they won them both. And that's a good Twins team. That was a good series win. A good series sweep, I guess. I don't really want to call a 2-game series a sweep, but they did. They won both games, so I guess I'm going to.
On
Um,
the pitching front, I wanted to ask you about 2 guys. One, you mentioned McGill. We can get to him second, I guess. But
yeah,
our newcomer, Aaron Savall here, hasn't looked amazing. Gave up a few home runs. He's had a little bit of a home run problem, it seems like. Do you
yeah.
think it's more of an adjustment on, are we trying to change up what he's doing? Are we playing with what he's got, like his arsenal and stuff? Is that why he's struggling? Or do you think it's more of just he's just struggling and he needs to figure it out? Or is he trying to play with some stuff, I guess?
Well, this was what his third game, third
Yeah.
start with us. His second start was really good against Pittsburgh. So I don't. He had a bit of a rough one against the Dodgers, although 2 of the homers he gave up hit the very top of the fence, including that short fence in LA. So I honestly, I don't. I thought this was his worst of the 3 starts, and I think results wise, he could have very easily have given up like 1 earned run. If Turang makes the correct play on the Vasquez play, well, Larnach should have struck out before he hit his 2-run homer, but he was all over the place in this one. Like his command just wasn't good. It was very good in the Pittsburgh start. I actually thought it was okay in that Dodger start, other than he left a couple of sweepers up for Will Smith. I didn't think the rest of the pitches were very bad in that game. This one, it felt like he was actually kind of getting lucky, but also getting unlucky at the same time, where results wise, he probably got what he deserved in the end, but it just came by weird, like in a weird way. And also felt like just a couple things go his way that should have gone his way. And he very easily could have walked out of this one with like I said, 1 earned run, maybe 2. Um, I don't think Savali's going to be like a stud pitcher, but I actually like what I've seen from him for the most part. I think he's going to be a fine middle of the rotation guy who can, for the most part, give you 6 innings most nights, I would imagine. But in terms of McGill, it just feels like he's kind of in the Corey Knebel type of downturn a little bit, where he's leaving the fastball down, which gets hit a lot more with his shape and the way he throws it. The curveball command is kind of coming and going more often than it was early in the season, where he could really land that thing wherever he wanted it. And if he doesn't have both of those going, he's still a good pitcher because he throws as hard as he does and he's not walking guys. But he does have a lot more that you have to actually worry about when he's not commanding those pitches as well. And Devin Williams coming back soon will be nice. I like Trevor McGill. I want him in our bullpen. I don't know that I trust him as much as a closer as I did earlier in the season. But in an eighth inning role with a little bit less pressure on him, a little bit less of the high stakes stuff going on, I'm not super worried about him. His stuff is fine. Like it hasn't regressed or anything. He's fine. It's just about being a little bit more consistent with the command of it. So not really worried about either of them, honestly. I will say Brian Hudson, I am pretty concerned about. His velo's going down. He's not throwing his sweeper hardly at all. Just a lot of signs to me that kind of point to a guy who might be dealing with something. So I'm curious. I'll be watching him. I would not be shocked if we saw him with an IL stint at some point in the near future. Just all of this stuff happening feels like a guy who's dealing with something. And the results have started to back up a guy who's struggling a little bit more right now. It hasn't been terrible or anything, but he's definitely not anywhere near the dominant guy that he was early in the season. But we'll move to the Cubs series. There's a lot less to talk about than this one because hardly anyone scored for either team the entire series. Game 1, Brewers had plenty of opportunities. They stranded the bases loaded multiple times. Javier Assad was the first pitcher since 2016 to walk 6 in fewer than 4 innings without allowing a single run. The Brewers just kept letting him off the hook, could not get a run across. Willie ended up giving us our only offensive highlight with a solo homer late in the game, but Tobias Myers pitched pretty well again in this one. Honestly, he hurt himself more on the defensive side of the ball than anything else. The first run he gave up, I would say it was a hit, but it was a play Willie Adames should have made. One hopper right to Willie, kind of came up on him, got him in the chest, rolled away. So they marked it a single. Tobias Myers goes into his stretch and his back foot slips and he falls down for a balk. So that guy got the second then. And then with 2 outs, they singled him in. So the balk ended up costing Myers a run on that one. And then later in the game, Myers had a chance to turn a double play, ended up throwing it out of reach of Turang into center field, which ended up also costing him another run. So he pitched well. And as Gunnar noted on there, he is currently top 5 in the lowest all-time ERA for a Brewers starter in their rookie season. He's doing extremely well. Like I said, the pitching was not a problem at all for him in this one. It was just more on the defensive side of things. But Gunnar, you got anything you want to touch on in this one? This was not a very exciting one, but I know it really came down to the Brewers just not being able to take advantage of the opportunities they had.
Yeah, that was my thing. And I listened to a little bit of the Cubs broadcast, looking at the highlights back again. And the funny thing with Assad is he's known for like his command and not walking guys. So you got this absolute gift of a guy with walking everybody, making it easy on yourselves, and then you cannot come through when it matters most, which recently I feel like that's what the Brewers are not doing well. And that seems like our last few years, that's what we haven't done well as runners in scoring position and just coming through with the big hit. First half of this year, we did that plenty of times, but and we'll talk about this topic later too about maybe if we could add somebody or something. But yeah, it feels like maybe our offense is just lacking that extra punch, which we need. Just somebody to clean up the other work that the rest of the easier, the not easier. It's not easy to get walks and stuff, but the less sexy work. Someone to come up with the big hit. That'd be nice. But yeah, with Tobias, I was gonna give you a pop quiz. Who is the I don't remember all the names in the top five, but who was the guy who was higher or lower than him in the last like 10 years? 'Cause I think there was one modern name on there, and the other ones were like old time names.
I did not see this. I'm gonna go Taylor Youngman,
No,
Willie Peralta.
no. You're gonna be mad if I once I tell you it.
Is it just Burns? No,
Ju
Woodruff, Freddie.
Junior Guerra.
Oh, I always forget he was actually a rookie
Yeah, I
that
know. He
first
was like
year.
a 29-year-old,
Yeah, he
maybe
was like
31-year-old rookie. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Okay, that I believe that though. That definitely makes sense. All right,
Um,
fair enough. You got
yeah, but
me. You
then
stumped me.
yeah, I said I'd rub that in your face. I knew you wouldn't get it, but actually, I thought you might have gotten it. But
He
yeah, I
didn't
mean, the
even
only
cross my mind.
offense, the only offense that we did end up getting was a Willie Adames bombed right center. Um, again, our offense didn't come through, but even after that bomb, it's like, oh, it's a close game still, but it feels like it was a 10-run game because we cannot scratch
Yeah,
across any sort of runs whatsoever. And that was sort of the end of this one, unfortunately. But yeah.
yeah. Game two ended up being one that I was only able to catch the last two innings of, though I will say those were probably the two best innings for me to have been able to watch, given how this one ended up going. But we did have Colin Ray, Code Red, on the mound, giving us five shutout, eight strikeouts. First of all, that's a very good Colin Ray game. Not a big strikeout guy, not a bad, not like a low strikeout guy, but you don't see eight strikeouts through five very often from him. Like I said, I didn't have a chance to watch Gunner. I don't know if this was just a matter of him commanding stuff well. Was he able to put guys away, or what was going on to get him all these strikeouts?
I just thought it was a good Colin Ray start, to be honest. He was really on good command, just really sharp stuff, I guess, in my opinion. It didn't seem like anything out of the ordinary for him, but
Yeah.
also the strikeouts are really what took it away from me. But
Yeah. Yeah. And then the bullpen obviously came in and did their job as well. This ends up being a 1-0 win for the Brewers. Brice Turang, who's really been struggling for a bit here, um, came through in a big spot. Again, it seemed like I wasn't watching, but I did see a few tweets. And by a few, I mean every Brewer fan that I follow was very upset during the course of the game. Seems like we must have missed some more opportunities, but the Brewers were able to come through and score one run on this Turang single in a really big spot, obviously, to give him the lead in the top of the eighth. And then Jared Koenig came in the bottom of the eighth and made it very, very interesting. He honestly, I didn't think he had like awful command, even though he did have his walk mixed in there, gave up a couple of singles, ended up loading the bases before he got out of it. It wasn't it wasn't like he was all over the place, but he definitely wasn't hitting corners like he does a lot of the time. And the Cubs were just battling everything in that inning. Like they would just not go down without a fight, which credit to them because clearly they were struggling with that early in the game against Ray. But Koenig made some good pitches and just could not put anyone away. Ended up being able to get out of it though. And Trevor McGill came in, probably had one of his better appearances in a little bit here. One inning, he only had one strikeout against Pete Crow Armstrong, but I thought his command was pretty good in this one. He was hitting spots pretty well. The only guy he struggled with it a little bit was Dansby Swanson. Again, not to make this too big of a point here, but I thought very poor pitch calling from Contreras throughout the Swanson at bat. Swanson almost hit a game tying homer. He just missed it foul. He was clearly on the fastball, and all he saw after that was more fastballs, and he ended up lining a single very hard up the middle for that one hit that McGill allowed. But luckily, he didn't square it up better and get it in the air because if he did, it would have been tied. Like he was all over the fastball. I get it in a 3-2 count there. You don't want to walk him, but I would have gone curveball, and I think Eric Haas would have as well because we already saw him do it in Minnesota. So Jameson Taillon continues to be an issue for the Brewers offense. He didn't quite dominate like he did in some of the other starts against us. 7 1/3 though, only one earned run, three strikeouts to three walks, which I mean that's not great. Only gave up 4 hits though, whip under one on the game, and their pen did fine too. It just the one run did end up scoring against him after he left the game. That's who Turang knocked in one of his base runners. So 1-0 win. Again, not the prettiest, not the most exciting in some ways, I would say, but it was a very good win. You need to win some of those games. The Brewers have always kind of made a living off of winning games like this throughout the season. Good to see them do it against the Cubs and specifically against the manager that was known for doing that in these types of games. Um, the one big thing here, this is when we knew Yelich was really hurt. He had walked twice in this game, but he didn't have a hit. And then he was pinch hit for late in the game by Rhys Hoskins. And when he got pinch hit for against the righty, you knew this had gotten to a point that it was pretty bad. And we'll talk about it after we quickly recap game 3 here. But I think that was when everyone knew, yeah, he's for sure going on the IL. Hopefully that's all it is. And we will see, I guess. But in game 3, the Brewers
I do.
ended up,
Wait. I got some game 2 notes because that just popped in my head now that I thought about it. And maybe you
sure.
saw this play. It blew up a little bit on Twitter. This is why you mentioned it popped in my head after you mentioned the Trang, why people were like, oh my God, we got to run finally. But because we had some close calls in the 6th inning, I think it was, we had a contact play again with Garrett Mitchell sliding into home. And it was a little bit of a play where I saw people mad that he just went in general. I saw people mad about how he slid going into home because he chose the outside of the home plate. I guess it's on a bag. He chose the outside of his vantage point
Yep.
bag, and then that ended up going right into Christopher Morales' throw, who ironically is a bad defender, and he
Yeah.
makes a bad throw, and it works out absolutely perfectly. I'm shocked about how even close it was. I can't be mad at that. I was just shocked, like, wow, he got that out quick. Um, but yeah, I can't be mad at that play at all. I think it was just a lot of bit of luck overall. Like I said, the throw was so bad that it was perfect. I mean, it was very intentional the way Garrett slid. Like he almost ran into the guy for how far off the bag he was trying to go around the plate.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wasn't too mad at that play in general. But I don't know if you saw that one. I just know that one
I
got a lot of
did.
reaction
Now
on
that you
Twitter.
mention it, yeah, I did see that one on Twitter. I think the one thing you would say is that normally on a ground ball to third, you would want the guy to run on the inside of the base line so that
Right.
they can
I
potentially
saw
get in the
Pat
way
Murphy
of the
say that.
throw.
Yeah.
Um, but the slide being outside is fine. You would normally want to slide outside. Normally, the catcher isn't going to be taken that way by the throw like he was. So I agree with you. Based on what I saw, it was more just Morel made a bad throw that happened to make it
Hmm.
a perfect throw on accident. Um, but yeah, the contact play is hard for me. I just with guys like Mitchell and those types of players, I think it makes sense a lot of the time
Yeah,
to
totally.
make them make that play with that type of speed going down the line, especially balls hit the third. They're hard to read enough where if you even hesitate, you might just get tagged out trying to go back to third on those types of plays, depending on the secondary and stuff. So it's a tough play. I think in a lot of cases it makes sense. I didn't have a problem based on seeing that one. It's obviously more a case of, for me, offensive execution. The Brewers I saw today are 27th in the league in sack flies. Like that's where they're getting killed in these spots. That you have to hit the ball in the air. These ground balls in these spots give the defense a ton of opportunity to get you out. Sack flies are a very effective way to get a guy in from third. Fly balls are an effective way to get someone in. Grounders are not. So to me, that's been a bigger issue. I know there was a lot of bunt talk here. We're going to get to that in a little bit, but that was a good play to bring up because yeah, I did see a lot of people upset about that, and I would agree with you based on what I saw. I thought it was mostly fine. I think the only thing I would change is that I would want Mitchell to be running inside of fair territory as he was going towards home. But
Yeah.
moving to game 3 ended up being a bullpen by committee day. It was a pen game. Rob Zastryzny on the mound. He ended up giving up his first 4 hits of the season. Obviously, he's only been up for a while, but he had pitched in over 6 innings and had yet to give up a hit. Cubs were able to scratch a few across, or a few hits across, ended up leading to 1 run, and then he gave way to Brice Wilson, who was able to limit what was a potential scoring opportunity for the Cubs when he entered the game. Wilson did well in this one. He ended up giving up a solo homer to Seiya Suzuki, who feels like one of those guys who just homers off the Brewers every single time we play them. Um, but other than that, he did a fantastic job in this one. Handed the ball off to Jacob Junis, who carried that over 3 scoreless innings, only 2 base runners. Brewers were able to finally scratch a run across in this one. Um, it was sitting, it was sitting at 2-2 heading into the ninth. The Brewers had put up two, obviously, on a Churio single again with the bases loaded. Unfortunately, it was almost a diving catch, so it only scored 1 run. Suzuki hit that homer to make it 2-1, and then Turang had another big hit in this one to tie it up. Again, the Brewers were kind of put in a spot where it looked like they were going to waste another opportunity, but Turang was able to come through, score Willy Adames, and then in the top of the ninth, William Contreras came up with a huge and much needed for him and the team, a huge RBI double to score Blake Perkins to give the Brewers the lead. We talked about McGill had already pitched quite a bit recently. Brewers went to Yoel Payamps in this spot, which I think was kind of one of their only options available. Payamps has been much better lately, much, much better. His last like 5 or 6 outings, and he looked good. Clean inning, 2 strikeouts. Slider looked good. Sinker looked good. He used the four seam and the sinker well. Clean ninth inning, which was very nice to see. It'd been a while for the Brewers. There'd been a lot of interesting ninth innings, and yeah, he shut it down. Big series win. Ugly series win. Really, just the Brewers did not play very good baseball all around in this series, and yet they came out of it with 2 of 3 and 4 of 5 out of the break. I think unless you have anything specifically in this game, I think we got to talk about
No.
Yelich now. This is where winning 4 of 5 was important no matter what once you're in the second half of the season. Like, you want to win games. This is going to be an important stretch here. Doing it while Yelich missed 2 of the 5 games total, got pulled out of one of the other 3 early, and hearing him talk to the media and then hearing Murph talk to the media this morning, it sounded very solemn. It sounded like they are pretty concerned about this. And right before we started recording, Ken Rosenthal did report that season-ending surgery is a possibility for Yelich. So let's not assume that yet, but let's say he's out for a couple of months here and maybe he's back by the end of the season. If that scenario plays out, what does that mean for the team? And then we'll look at it more from the he's out for the season perspective after that.
Yeah, short term, I think we've got plenty of bodies to cover. I know we've been talking all year long about how we're going to fit when Mitchell comes back, how we're going to find at bats for all these young guys. I think the problem for me, and we've talked about it a little bit, is maybe this team was already sort of lacking another hitter, which maybe had a little bit more of a veteran presence, a guy you can rely on more. Last year, if you turn the clock back, it was guys like Mark Hanna, or we just got killed by him, but Carlos Santana. Not amazing hitters by any stretch. They have their stretches where they are good hitters and could catch a hot streak here and there, but just guys you can rely on more than rather than these, I call them wild cards, but young guys where you might get a Jackson Cheerio a couple hot weeks and he looks like he's an MVP candidate, but then you get the next couple weeks where he's struggling, but that's just the life of a rookie hitter. He's trying to figure it out. Mitchell, we still have no idea what Mitchell is. He's been up and down. He's doing things, but it just seems more like of the same about these young hitters, is not really giving us that extra punch that we need. So short term, I think, regardless of what this is, even if Yelich comes back in a week, let's say, and it's, oh, wow, we completely misread this and he's back in a week, I still think we probably need another hitter anyways. But just let's say he's gone for a month or 2 months, I would still get a hitter too. So, yeah, like I said, we could cover it short term. I just it's hard because you want to see it through the vision almost. I'm not trying to lose focus of maybe what this season means, because we're in such a weird limbo here where we can win a World Series, but we also have all these young guys where I want them to grow and play. So it's almost like a blessing in disguise here where I guess it's not a blessing. I don't want Christian Yelich to get hurt, but it's almost like, okay, we have this opportunity now where we can see all these young guys play in a big stakes. We're in first place. We have a couple months left. By no means are you kicking the can, I think, if you just say, let's just let these young guys play. With the short-term vision in mind, of course, that Yelich does come back. I don't think that's a horrible way to go about it either, but it's tough. I'm going to be shocked if they don't get somebody, but also I'll be shocked if they get somebody who, and we'll go over some of the names. They're not going to be crazy names, but I'm going to be shocked if it's somebody where they have to give up a decent amount to get him. And I don't think that'll ever be the case as far as a hitter getting picked up is concerning. So, as far as short term goes, are you like along the same lines as far as maybe we do need a bat regardless, or we need an outfielder regardless? Like, do you think we'll pick up somebody, or do you think we have enough in-house to cover it short term?
I think maybe one of my hotter takes was that I thought there was a chance they were going to add an outfielder regardless of Yelich being healthy or not. Um, we all know my feelings on Garrett Mitchell. He has not really made me feel too much better. He is chasing less, which is good. I am just watching him. I just think he's guessing. I really do. Like watching him take pitches right down the middle in two strike counts just gives me the appearance of someone who is just straight up guessing what pitch is being thrown in that moment. Um, he's playing fine defensively, obviously, and Perkins is he's fine as well. Like I have no problems with either of them. I just don't know that I want either of them starting regularly. Sal's been better. I still don't know that they couldn't upgrade him pretty easily on the market. And without Yelich, especially, I think they're going to add somebody. Now, I agree with you. I don't think you're going to go out and see Luis Robert brought in, for example, like that. That would be pretty shocking. I think the only way that happens is if the White Sox love some of the young outfielders the Brewers have, and they can kind of make that swap. Um, but I would be pretty surprised at somebody like that. But I do think they'll add. I think if he is out for the season, almost certain they will add somebody. But again, I still don't think it's going to be somebody that's like super, super exciting to fans. I think it will be a solid hitter, kind of like a Mark Canha pickup last year, where it was like, yeah, he will upgrade the bottom part of our lineup and maybe be a bit more than that at times. And like you said, bring a veteran presence and a good approach, all those types of things. Some names we wrote down here. This one, I want this to happen because it would be the funniest thing in the world to me, but Jesse Winker is actually a pretty good fit in terms of the bat, what he's bringing this year offensively. A lefty bat, the Brewers could use somebody with a little bit more pop from that side of the plate, I think, to fill this Yelich role. And he's not I mean, you don't want him playing defense very often, but Yelich has been a mediocre defender this year as well. So it's not like you would be downgrading terribly by putting him in left. Lane Thomas sticking with the Nationals is very interesting to me. Now, he's been a terrible defender, shockingly. Must get the worst reads in the world because he is very, very fast. He's in like the 92nd percentile for sprint speed. Believe he had 27 or 28 homers last year. He's shown pop this year still. He's still hitting some homers. Um, just a really good athlete with some pop. I think in terms of like, I would rather see Lane Thomas leading off for the Brewers than Brice Turang right now. Like that would be a better fit. He's more of like, that's a probably not a cheap option. Although I think he's either expiring or he has a year and a half left. So he's not super, super expensive, I would imagine. And then if you're shooting for the stars and you're hoping for somebody to genuinely impact the lineup and make a big difference, Brent Rooker is probably the one guy that feels semi plausible. And if for only one reason that the A's are pretty stupid and you never know who they will want in return for a guy like that. Um, we obviously know the Esteury Ruiz trade for Contreras and everything there, but the A's have had some pretty interesting trades over the years. I think they're run pretty decently right now, but you never know if they're in love with a guy like Mitchell or a guy like Weimer. The guys who have huge tools, like those are the types that they tend to like a lot more than others. So the Brewers do have some of those guys with some risk but huge tools in their system. So you never really know. But Gunnar, any of those names catch your eye, and any other names you might want to add if you have any?
I'm just trying not to laugh with the Jesse Winker one. I'm imagining him one. You know how much I liked Jesse Winker before he was a Brewer, but just thinking of the scenario that he had last season with a similar thing with Yelich, a back injury. I just imagine him if we do trade for him, which we won't. But he does come in somehow and he's turning it around, but then he has a back injury that he's playing through, and then he's just getting booed again by the end of the year. It'd be hilarious. I like Lane Thomas, but he's very much in the fine line of you're probably paying a little bit too much for a guy like that. I think he's
Hmm.
controllable, but I don't super, super love him. Just seems like a little bit of a weird fit with us totally. But I like the bat. And then yeah, Brent Rooker feels like you just went over the ledge there and you said, okay. We really need a bat here, and we're probably going to pay too much for it, but I would like it a lot. So um, I don't really have any other names. I would just say in the Jesse Winker category, probably not Jesse Winker, but that would be who I'm thinking where we have the guys to play the defense depending on, again, who you trade. So you don't necessarily need to fill Christian Yelich in left field necessarily. It's just maybe trying to fill in his bat as best as you can. But then guys will have to step up regardless because you're not going to be able to acquire a 900 OPS guy, regardless of what you do really anyway. So we are screwed a little bit here in this sense because even thinking about this Yelich and how good he's been this year, we talked about it like a bunch. He was just in the All-Star game. Like it's gonna feel a lot worse now without Yelich in the lineup in this back half of the year. We're already feeling like we're struggling as a team too. So um, someone like William Contreras is someone I brought up last episode. Like it's gonna be a lot on him, and Willy Adames is starting to get a little bit hotter too. Like those guys really do have to step up. Otherwise, we're going to be looking at the same type of Brewers offense probably that we've been complaining
Yeah.
about for the last few years, outside of the fact that obviously we make things interesting on the bases and whatnot, which is what's different about this team, which is nice. But yeah, I think we just do need somebody, and I would probably guess in that Jesse Winker category is probably
Yeah.
the safest route for sure. And I like you, I would definitely want him back, or I would take him back with open arms, but it would be hilarious.
Um, yeah, I guess what we're saying is we're gonna paraphrase Brad Pitt in Moneyball and say we can't replace Yelich, but we might be able to recreate him in the aggregate. So we'll see if they can do that. I'm gonna be very interested to see what happens. I'm gonna be very interested, obviously, to see how long this actually ends up being. I mean, back surgery, we saw it with Brooke Lopez on the Bucks. It can take a long time. It could be more than just this season. It could be something that carries into next season. So
Oh yeah.
it's not good news, that's for sure. Hopefully, we do end up getting better news once he gets all the imaging and all that stuff done, but definitely not what we wanted to hear this week at all, especially like Gunnar mentioned. It felt like he was legitimately starting to really be that guy again, and now got to be hard for him more than anyone else to just have this happen after he was really seeing success again for the first time and true success for the first time in a while. But moving on to our questions for the crew. I mentioned it earlier on the first one here. We needed to talk about it just because it happened a lot in this Cubs series. But are the Brewers bunting too much right now? Like for me, and I texted you this, but like the bunt is a tool in your toolbox, but it should not be one of your main tools in your toolbox. And it feels like they're kind of using it that way lately. Pat Murphy had interesting comments. It kind of sounded to me like the players are taking it upon themselves to bunt this often and that he's actually not thrilled with it. But what are your overall thoughts? Do you think just generally not blaming anyone here or whose decision it is, but are they bunting too much right now?
They are, but I think in general terms, it seems like it hasn't hurt us a bunch too. Now it depends on what you view as like quote unquote working out or not hurting us. Like to me, I feel like more times than not, you are just giving up and out. And it depends how you bunt too. Now the guys that we have bunting most of the times can bunt for base hits and it can work out better in our favor. But we've seen recently, like in the last couple of weeks, it just seems like we're doing sacrifices and now you're just giving up outs. And what's the point of that? So it's somewhere in a mix of that where I think if we can one tone it down regardless, but also tone it down to just guys who are able to run and bunt for hits like Yelich or I mean Garrett Mitchell did it in one of the games. I don't know which game he did it too, but yeah, I think doing that more often, but also I think just the vibe recently has been. I wouldn't be shocked if the players took it upon themselves. Just it feels like we're trending down as like a hitting group. And I outside of the I guess the 12th inning in the Twins series, it feels like we were trending down. But it feels like we're almost pinching pennies here, trying to score runs sometimes when um, it doesn't have to necessarily feel like that all the time too. I think we're still top half in OPS for the season. Again, trending down, I understand that, but you mentioned the sack flies and stuff like that too. Just we got to change our approach a little bit and trust our hitters a little bit more. I we talk about that balance a lot too, and it seems like the balance has shifted a little bit too much in the gross area. What we both don't like is a hitting group, and we just need to balance it out a little bit better and trust our hitters a little bit more. Let them swing, let them make mistakes. Um, I mean, a lot of the times, I don't want to get too much into bunting, but I feel like a lot of the times, unless it's like a heavy strikeout guy, like let's say Garrett Mitchell seems like a weird one where he could strike out and he's also a good bunter. So, and could bunt for a base hit. Like that guy, it seems all or nothing. So I can understand it for that type of hitter, but like a Sal Frelick, like I could see him doing either a really good positive or he's going to do probably the same result as what a bunt might do anyways.
Hmm.
So I think a risk reward there, it has to be player based. Um, and most of the times in these higher situations, just don't give up outs. Like uh, the higher risk of something happening badly, I think is not as high as what we probably think it is, and we're just trying to pinch runs across the board. So I don't hate bunting, but I hate bunting like sacrifice bunting. I love bunting for hits, but we're just even doing that, I think, a little bit too much. So trying to balance it out like we are doing in the first half of the year, I think would be a lot better for me. So
Yeah, I'm with you. I think in terms of bunting for hits, like it's fine. It's a good play when teams aren't prepared for it, especially. Teams are sitting their third baseman like against all of our fast lefties. Their third baseman's in on the grass, ready for a bunt every time they come up now. It's making it a lot harder to get that done. Um, the good news is that's opened up a lot more infield for you to work with as a hitter, and guys like Frelick have taken advantage of that a little bit. We'll talk about Turang in a second here because we got a question about him. But the bunting, like Joey Ortiz's sac bunt that he attempted in the Cubs series, that ended up getting popped up right to the first baseman. He showed bunt the first time. He knew that Bush was running in at 100 miles per hour. Second baseman was leaving that whole side of the infield unattended to go cover first. A guy like Ortiz should be swinging when he knows that that is how
yeah,
they're operating. Like there's no good reason for him to be bunting in that spot. And from the sound of it, I don't think Murph wanted him to there. I think it almost sounds like, to me, it feels like the Brewers hitters believe now that they have to do this type of stuff to scratch across runs instead of just going, hey, we can just get hits and score runs that way. Like almost like someone told them, like, hey, you're gonna have to get down and dirty to get these runs, and you're gonna have to do the little things and do all this stuff. And like, so I might say, while Murphy might not be calling all these bunts, I have a feeling the way he's talked to them about offense may be convincing them that they should be bunting in these spots at times. So I almost think he needs to take it out of their hands once in a while and say, hey, you're swinging. Like when you go up there, you're not bunting, regardless of where they're playing. Like go up and hit. Let's hit. Let's be hitters. Let's be aggressive. Let's try and hit the ball hard. It feels like we're getting into this like let's draw walks and then steal or bunt them over type of thing. It's like it's not a reliable way to score runs. It's a fun way to do it when you do it, and it can be entertaining, but it's clearly not working. And you got to be able to hit for some power and hit some extra base hits and stuff. So, yeah, I think we're on the same page there. But speaking of Brice Turang, it has been a while since we got a good stretch of offense from him. Lucas asked, is 2023 Brice Turang back? Some added context, his last 30 games, he has a 602 OPS. Not good. His season long OPS is now down to just over 700. His weighted runs created plus is 102. So he's basically just a league average hitter now. Now, Gunner, I would say this probably isn't super shocking to us. This is kind of what we expected overall, and he just did it in a very hot and then very cold manner to get here. But in terms of like approach and stuff, for me, and then I'll let you might see something different here, but it does look like he's almost gotten into this mode which he got into last year where he was trying to be someone he's not and trying to hit the ball hard and in the air and pull side a lot more than like he had a couple flyouts to the wall in Minnesota. But that's the thing. He hit those well and they were flyouts to the wall. That's why it's not a good approach for him because he can't hit for power on purpose. Like he does it on accident. He does it when he's trying to hit a line drive in a gap and then he catches it out in front more. So I do see a lot of similarities to what he was doing last year. Now I have my doubts that he will just fall straight back into that type of hitter. I think he'll figure things out again soon. But there's been a lot of 2023 Brice Turang in the last like month and a half or so.
yeah. I mean, for he almost hit a grand slam, like you said in that Twin series. I forgot to mention that during that game. Um, and I did start to notice that a little bit. It seemed like he was like, "Oh, I'm having a good season here." Ironically, I that's why I stretched out the OPS to about, I think it was the last 30 games there, 602. Because it seems like, oh, it's just been the last few weeks type of thing, but no, it's been quite a while here. And he did have a good-ish stretch beginning of that month, I remember, but then it seems like ever since, weirdly, I feel like ever since the All-Star thing sort of happened, it seems like it's gotten worse. And I don't know if it's him. I don't think it has anything to do with it. It's a weird coincidence. Obviously, he didn't get the nod, and then it does feel like maybe his approach changed a little bit. Maybe I'm completely going ESPN first take here, but maybe he feels like, oh, you didn't respect how I played before. Maybe I'll tap into some more power or something like you said. Maybe he switched an approach that way. I doubt it was like that, but he did try to switch his approach, it seems like. Um, but yeah, I guess as far as comparing him to last season, I don't even think it's that bad still. I mean, you got to remember how bad he was last season. He was like maybe bottom three worst hitter in the
Oh
MLB,
yeah.
like really, really bad. And I always say it's not tangible to point to, but when I feel like a guy is just completely hopeless up there at the plate, like I mentioned that with Reese in the last month, his stats aren't good, but I don't feel hopeless when he's at the plate. I don't feel hopeless right now when Brice is at the plate either. And he's had a couple good, I guess, clutch hits, clutch at bats here in the last few games too. But I just, it depends maybe what your expectations were if that got switched going into this year. Ours didn't switch, I guess, going into the year, but as the year progressed, the first couple months, if you're like, oh my God, Brice Turang is a 800 OPS player now, and he's just unlocked this really good approach, and he's just going to stick to it the whole time, and it's going to work all the time. I never really had that feeling, and we apologize because he did turn it around and he did become a good player. But yeah, I guess it just depends on what you're feeling like. I just never felt like he was all of a sudden this like dramatically different player. Now I think he changed his game a lot from last year, and perfected his craft really with his new approach. But I also think with that approach, I think the room for error is really small, with the way that he was hitting. And like we both said, it felt really real what he was doing. Like it's not luck how he was playing. It was like he earned it. He was a legit good hitter, with his approach, but also with him not getting any extra base hits or having really no power. And he won't, like you said, that's not who he is. That's not who he's ever going to be. He might run into one every once in a while, like he does, because he does have a nice sweet swing sometimes, but he just can't change that approach ever, really, and that's when he's going to get into trouble. Um, but yeah, I think, like I mentioned with Jackson Cheerio, he can play around with maybe not getting as many walks from time to time because he has that extra base power that he can tap into. But with Brice Turang, I think his walks have even dipped now in the last like month or so. Like his approach is just totally flipped from what he was doing the first couple months. And if you're not even getting the hits that you're used to getting and you're changing that approach, your play discipline is completely different. I mean, he's a guy that we need to get on base too. I mean, he's creates havoc on the bases as we've said all year long. So I don't think it's that bad. It's trending that way for sure. Like I said, the last month, 600 OPS, he was probably what, 560 or something last year with a ton of at bats. So it's going that direction. It's not too late for him to turn it around. Maybe he's this last few games with a couple clutch hits here. Maybe that's made him realize that I can just do the small things and have some success. But um, I, with Yelich being out too and all that, I just hope that he doesn't feel like he has to take on a bigger load or anything.
Right.
Just totally stick to your approach. Even if that's you hitting ninth, I mean, he's going to go from ninth to lead off, obviously, depending on who we pitch or whatever, or who we face. But just please do not change your approach. Stick to what you were doing good at. I still don't even expect it to be that good, honestly. If he's like a 720, 740 OPS with great defense, I'm still going to take that. That's totally fine. He just cannot be this bad. And that's what we've been saying for the last year with him.
Yeah. In July, obviously there's the All-Star break in the middle there.
Hmm.
Doesn't include today's game, but 26 weighted runs created plus
Oof.
OPS of 433 in that time. So it's been a really, really bad month of July. He was fine in June though, so it, like Gunnar said, it's really been like 30 days, 30 games that haven't been very good. Um, it did kind of coincide with the All-Star stuff, and it also coincided, I think, when he hit the grand slam against the Cubs last year. That's what happened a couple times is he started hitting for some power He hit a couple homers, and then he got into a like I'm a power hitter type of mindset now, and you can kind of see it when it happens, and you can see it right now. Hopefully, like you said, this will help him out a little bit. Um, but along the lines of power, we did have a question from Johnny Castle asking, "Did will anyone on the team get to 25 homers?" So I think the only two names that sound super realistic to me right now are Rhys Hoskins and Willie Adames. But I wouldn't rule out William Contreras getting like super hot power wise because it feels like he's kind of due for a stretch like that. Any other names, Gunnar? Are those kind of the ones you would point to? I don't know. I don't know if anyone will. Honestly, I wouldn't be
Yeah,
surprised if nobody
it could
does.
go either way, but those are the two names, obviously. And along, I mean, to answer the question very, very literally, it's either of those two names if I'm putting money on it.
Yeah.
Jackson Churio, I guess, if he
Yeah.
got absolutely on fire here, which he could, his swing looks
He
amazing,
could.
and 2 months is not unrealistic to have 2+ months, I guess, really, to have 15 home runs. That's not crazy, but um, I think to make the question a little bit twisted and to answer it in a different way is because we just talked about maybe the lack of power in this offense, regardless. So I'd hope that a couple of these guys get hot, and I don't care about the number necessarily, but I think it just shows that we do need some more power in this lineup. Otherwise, we're looking at what we've been looking at the last few years, where last year in the playoffs, there are 2 games we could not get the extra base hits that we needed. So I think we just need some extra base power, and hopefully it's within the guys that we got right now. But we still need some more guys for sure, or one more guy at least.
Yep. Definitely agree with that. I think we'll close this off with your draft question. So I know you wanted to lead in this, Gunnar. So how about you? How about you ask me this question?
Yeah, I was curious, and we ended obviously last podcast talking about the draft picks, and it was getting to be a longer episode, so we left the question out that maybe I wanted to know and comparing it to what we've got now. So I mean, the obvious question is one, the whole last week has been us trying to sign guys and what they're going to get signed for and that game. So it's hard to tell who obviously gets signed and who doesn't. But now that it's a little bit more official, probably a good time, and then I'm able to ask you this now. But looking at I mean, there is a public top 30, but my question is more your top 30 because I care more about your list. Do you see any of the guys that we drafted? Obviously, I think some of them are going to crack the top 30 here, as they always do, but where do you see some of these guys maybe slotting in? Not perfectly, because it's probably way too early to tell, but maybe like tiers, where do you have some of
Hmm.
these guys cracking in your top 30?
Yeah, top 30. I mean, Braylon Payne and Blake Burke are definitely both going to be in like that 15 to 20 range, probably for me. Um, Bryce Message might be, he'd be in that 15-ish range as well. I might have him a little bit higher than both of those two. And then Chris Lavonis, there was this was my favorite player in the draft, so I'm not happy about this, but there are rumors, and MLB Pipeline's podcast today talked about it, that he is asking for a number that is unreachable because he does not want to get signed and he wants to go to college. Normally, the Brewers would have had that figured out before drafting him. They decided to take him anyway. That's a bit concerning. That means if he does not sign, the Brewers would lose $1.23 million in pick value from their bonus pool. That's a problem too. Um, Obviously, they most likely saved quite a bit more above that. And I talked about like James Nunnally, who they took on day 3, as somebody who felt like he was going to get a lot. My understanding and what I have kind of heard is that he may have been an insurance pick if they didn't get Lavonis, because by that time they had kind of heard his demands and found he might not be signable. So we'll see where that goes. I think Nunnally probably slots into my top 30 if they do sign him. He'd probably be more towards like the 25 to 30 range. Lavonis for me was going to be in the top 10 to 15. Um, he was my favorite guy in this draft. So if they don't sign him, that's going to really hurt the draft, in my opinion. Like that would be a major hit to the draft. I guess we'll find out. It sounds bad. It does not sound like there's a very good chance of it. I wonder if maybe they'll be able to throw a bunch more money at him and just not sign some of those day 3 guys that they were planning to sign. Um, but the only other one I would consider is honestly Joey Broughton, the 13th round pick. I could see him being kind of close to my 30. He'd probably be just outside of it, but I like him a lot. Mason Molina is interesting, but probably a little bit more in like the 40 range. I do like Dingus. He's the one I'm not sure on. I got to look into him more, see if I think he can actually catch. If I think he can actually catch, he might be on the edge of it. But yeah, a lot of these guys are probably going to end up being like 40 to 50 early on, like their third round pick to Barry, and same with Molina. Some of the high schoolers like in the ninth and 10th rounds. And then, yeah, Broughton and Nunnally, if they sign those two, are going to be legitimate prospects right away for me. Travis Smith, the Kentucky pitcher, might actually honestly be uh, close to that type of range. Um, a, a lot of these guys will be, but I think that the main ones are going to be that for sure are in it are the first three picks. Lavonis for sure if he signs. And then I do think Nunnally, if he signs, would be in my top 30 too. So yeah, I just was not expecting the Lavonis news. I had honestly heard a little bit of a rumbling about it, but I did not believe it at all. I heard it from somebody who I really had no reason to know that he was in that moment, but yeah, they may have been right. So we will see. Like I said, that would really, really kill the draft class for me. I don't think it'd be terrible or anything, especially if they are able to kind of sign Nunnally and make up for that a little bit, but it would it would kind of defeat the purpose of having gotten the extra draft pick, having all that extra stuff. Like you would lose that much money in slot value anyway. So weird, weird pick. It sounds like my understanding is that they called him, asked if he would sign for an amount. He said no, and then they drafted him anyway, assuming they'd be able to sign him for more than what they had asked. And it sounds like that's still not going to be the case. So unfortunate. Like I said, probably my favorite pick in the whole class. So we'll see where that ends up landing. We still got about a week. I know Brice Turang, when he was a first rounder, there were a lot of concerns that he was not going to sign. He signed literally 5 minutes before the deadline, decided to forego his LSU commitment and sign with the Brewers. But this one would be not quite as high profile because it's not a first rounder, but be a big loss to not end up getting this guy signed. So that's what I got to say on the draft. Um, we'll finish this with our random Brewers. I promised to go a certain direction soon on some of these, so I did go that way. But Gunnar, who did you end up picking on this one?
Well, first, that was supposed to be a happy section, Spencer, and you just made that completely depressing. So
Yeah,
I
I know. Well,
apologize to the
I
listeners. I
everyone
thought I
else
was going
has
to
to
get you
feel
guys
my
some
pain.
happy content, but now that made me sad. But anyways, who I picked for the random brewer is Jorge De La Rosa. I remember him a little bit, like very, very little. I just remember him not being great when I was a kid. And then I remember being completely upset every time we would face him because it seemed like he'd always pitch well against us. I know I remember him vividly on the Rockies for sure. Not that he was like an excellent pitcher, but he was just a very, very solid pitcher. And if you remember us during that era of like 2007 to 2013-ish, like where we had a really good offense. Obviously, we were competing all the time. A couple playoff appearances in there, of course, that we all know very highlighted. But we did not have great pitching. So to see someone who was really bad for us and all of a sudden picks up, has this great late career resurgence, and is a pretty solid pitcher, and we had to face him, it seemed like all the time, and he would play good against us. It bothered me. And I feel like my dad or someone would always point it out every single time he played him that, hey, he played for the Brewers, or Bill Shorter would say it every time that we played him. I'd be like, okay, yeah, I know. Um, but yeah, that's who I got. Spencer went again with the COVID year,
Yep.
and who did you pick out of that 2020 season?
I'm going with Jed Jerko on this one. I always respected Jed Jerko as a player,
Oh yeah.
watching him over the years. Thought he had a nice swing, little power for a guy who played some second base and obviously played some third and then ended up playing first most of the time in that COVID year because my guy that I picked last week sucked and Justin Smoke. But Jerko had a really, really good season. 31 years old in that COVID year. He had an 838 OPS with 9 homers. He only played in 42 games of the 60 and then did not get signed anywhere the next season. And that was his last season in baseball. And it was so weird to me because he genuinely was very good that year. And it wasn't even like, if you look at his Savant page, it was solid. He was hitting the ball with actual, like, decent authority. Um, Very weird. It was all really, really weird. But he had a great season. Like I said last time, I don't actually have like a ton of memories from that season. It was hard for me to watch COVID baseball. Like I did it, but I don't have great memories of it. Like it was kind of a blur to me. But I do remember Jerko having a great year. And like I said, even though he was a Cardinal for a good stretch of it, I did always kind of respect his game. And he had a 30 homer season for the Cardinals, couple 20 homer seasons. Outside of that, just he was a solid hitter. Wasn't the best defender, but really solid hitter. So I went with Jerko. I guess along the draft lines, we did just get another draft number in as I was speaking. Marco Dingus, who I just talked about, signed for $500,000, which is a bit below slot value, but a little bit higher than I think I was. I was guessing 400,000 on my spreadsheet. That's only for myself, but um, he got 500,000, so that'll make things even a little bit more interesting. I thought they might save a little bit more money there, but he is my favorite guy. Oh boy, more numbers coming in. Oh, they're paying way more for people than I was anticipating. Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen here, but John Holibet's got 322,500. I was guessing 70,000. So that was
Wow.
not even remotely close to what I was expecting. They must like him quite a bit. Yeah, I guess we'll see where this all rolls out, but I have a feeling I'm not going to be super thrilled with the outcome for this Brewers draft. I guess we'll see in the end, but that'll wrap it up. Like Gunnar said, I had to end it on a very low note, but please like and subscribe if you love me dooming about the draft class on whatever platform you are listening on. Remember to follow us on Twitter at the Cream City Pod. Feel free to leave feedback for us on how we can get better. Thank you all for listening, and we will see you next time.
Go Crew.